So the other actual thing that happened this week, other than Donald Trump begging like a man who's down bad for the Georgia Secretary of State to change the vote count for him, there's actually a major thing that happened, which a little ray of light in the dark clouds. It looks like the Democrats may have somehow failed and stumbled their way into having at least control of two branches of government, with the presidency and the both branches of Congress, House and the Senate. Slim majorities in both. I think in the House they have it up by only like 10 or 11 votes, and then in the Senate they have it up by 2 votes. There's some talk of Murkowski maybe switching from being a Republican to a Democrat. I'm just going to say this right now so it's recorded in time so it can sound really cute later when she doesn't. And it is, you also have the issue that I've talked about at length in other contexts and will maybe continue to here about Joe Manchin, who has already said that he's not going to support anything like removing the Senate filibuster or changing things that have to do with budget reconciliation that would limit progressive ideas like Medicare for all or even some big infrastructure projects from happening. Joe Manchin's going to stand in the way of all of that. Joe Manchin's going to stand in the way of Medicare for all. Joe Manchin's going to stand in the way of not even like a Green New Deal, but even the slightest amount of climate legislation or justice that we can possibly do. I mean, Joe Manchin would probably stand in the way of $2,000 checks were it not for even Joe Biden saying that he would do that as long as the 2 senators were elected. It's a little bit too much on the nose, and you don't want to like kick off your presidential administration on that much of a wrong foot. There's really nowhere to go but up right now. But this is the moment that I've talked about on my episode with the insurgents. I talked about with Bam a little bit off like air sometimes, but like this is the moment where there are no excuses for Democrats to not do what at bare minimum what they were elected for, and there's also no excuses from the left, the insurgent left within the Democratic Party, to not be pressuring the Democratic Party at every measure they can. This is weirdly enough, like it's chaotic and it's horrible to say because there's so much unnecessary misery and suffering and death to get here. But this is the greatest political opportunity the Democrats have had since the beginning of the Obama administration. And I can't wait for them to fuck it up. Yeah, so I'd kind of like just end down there and that kind of like monologue bit. But like, yeah, what are your thoughts about like just Georgia happening and like, yeah, how the Democrats are going to ruin this?
Well, going back to Georgia, like I think it's pretty crazy. Like, Georgia was founded as an all-white colony, and now it's got the most black people, and it's got a black and a Jewish senator.
Bam, I don't like the way how you said a black. Why do you have to say a black? Like, why gotta be like that?
I'm allowed. And I
didn't know we're card checking Bam, but I'm down.
No, this ain't my old job. We do card check here.
Half Australian Jewish senator also. But yeah, I mean, like this is kind of my personal feelings of it. I've never really been someone to expect anything from like federal government or think that anything special is going to happen because there's Democrats in charge. So I don't really have any expectations. I mean, I'm glad that Mitch McConnell hopefully won't have as much power as he's had, because he's the worst. And he's the worst, and he's also a maverick. So like everybody was like talking about $2,000, and he's like the one person that's like no. So like the way I feel personally is like, okay, that's good for them. I'm not really having any expectations from having like Democrats in power. But it is significant. Raphael Warnock is like somebody who is, he's the pastor at where Martin Luther King Jr. used to preach, and these are pretty significant people. But on a personal level, I'm not like, I don't have much expectations because of that.
I'm a little bit on I'm not really aligned much with the kind of BAM is in terms of I do think there's going to be some more change with the federal government this time. I think that it's hard to compare this to what we've been seeing in the past because I think we can all agree that in the last probably 2 to 3 years we've kind of seen a lot of events that aren't really consistent with our lifetime and what we've
Yeah.
seen. Of course, I think Dan brings an excellent comparison to Obama's early administration. I think we all had a sense of like breath of fresh air when he had that beautiful intro and everybody's crying in a crowd and Obama comes through. I thought he was about to just dunk a ball right there. It was game over. But what you got to see is like, oh well, look, we had the Bush administration. We saw how that went down from Iraq and everything, and look where we are now. Like Obama's here. It's time for change, and that was a whole initiative. Well, fast forward to now. We had probably one of the most horrific movie-like exits for a president in history. I mean, it's from at least recorded history, and Lord knows what they was getting down back then when it was just papers and
And
Pony
knock on
Express.
wood, it's still in
But,
progress. Like we're
right-
still
right
not out of the
now-
woods yet. Like,
Yeah. Well, he's almost out, whatever, and hopefully 2 weeks he's out earlier. And you're seeing the transition into like, well, it went from being all red basically to getting the having the House still, getting the Senate votes, getting the 2 senators in Georgia, and to be honest with you, going into like all that the situation and Mitch McConnell going from major to like a minority basically now, in terms of the Senate minority leader. The only other people I really hate there are still John Cornyn and Ted Cruz. Like those are the 3-headed monsters I hate that are like running amok up in that Senate. So the fact that it is Democratic side a little bit uncomfortable with Kamala Harris being a swing vote, but it's all good. Hope she falls in line with a lot of the policies that we need to see fit. And I think that the Democrats have of course a good opportunity, but also I can only expect them to at least do 30% of what they could possibly do, because even if you roll out a 2K, I think that overall consensus, that would be a massive footstep forward for them just with like the public and American public in general. I think across party lines, I think people will be like, oh, at least they did that. Like, I don't like Democrats, but hey, at least they got me this 2K. Like, that's something, because the party that you had didn't get you that. The party that you were like before, maybe if you weren't Democratic, got you 600. So, and what 1,800 maybe the whole year, because if you got the 1250 before or whatever. So it's good to see. I think they can make a change, and I don't expect a ton of policy. I don't expect, of course, the fracking stuff, all this stuff going on. Yeah, as on the left side of the Democratic Party, we can only expect so much from the Democratic Party to pressure them to change. But if they just start off with just really kicking off with the IRS to get those stimulus bills out and upping, maybe even increasing the unemployment up until May or June instead of just March, just on a foot going forward, they can do their usual filibustering and doodling around as long as they get that done first. Just get that on the table first, then play around wherever the hell you want to do afterwards.
Does the resident fan of Kyle Kalinske have anything to say on the matter? On whether Democrats can be strong or not?
Well, first, before getting to that point, first off is I'm glad that Ossoff and Warnock won, because Perdue and Loeffler are 2 giant piles of pieces of shit. Loeffler was one of the several Republicans that was able to get insider information on coronavirus and traded stocks illegally with that insider information and gained money right before the pandemic started to have widespread consequences in America. And just, no.
And then
Purdue
I just want to break down really quickly for the audience. Insider trading, it's understanding when a stock is going to go up or down and before it actually happens, and using that information to benefit from that. And so Purdue's family family did that shit while running for the Senate in Georgia. Yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah, Kelly Loeffler. Yeah. Kelly Loeffler and her husband did that.
Yes. And then David Perdue is a frantic anti-Semite, because he kept running anti-Semitic ads against John Ossoff, like making his nose seem bigger in ads and stuff, and a couple other things that were pretty horrendous. So I am glad that they're out, and fuck them on God. Other thing now, going on to the main thing of now Democrats having relative control of the Senate and House and presidency, as long as Uncle Joe is, still vibing. the big thing with this is now they have nothing else to blame but themselves for the next couple years, because the thing with Democrats over the past for a while now is that they'll always deflect blame of why they can't do things. They'll deflect of, oh, we can't do Medicare for all, or we can't do this, we can't fight these guys on this because we don't have control of this, or blah blah blah, or we're pussies, who fucking knows, whatever. There is nothing else that they can blame but themselves for a long time now, and we have to get on them about it. If we want something done, you have to go and really get on to them, or else they're going to keep doing their neoliberal ways of just tiny little micro transactions, thank you EA, of reform, of these tiny little things that really do nothing in the long run. I mean, Obama was supposed to be this great leftist, but obviously he was a neoliberal corporatist to the heart and core, and all those policies of basically the 90s style of Democrats is not changed. And it's stuff that now we have some younger voices, obviously some more leftists and stuff that are getting into politics, which we'll tap on a little bit later on. But it's a step in the right direction. It's nice to see Georgia going that way with now more people. I mean, the black voter turnout was insane. There was so many people that went out to vote in the runoff, which is good to see. More, again, it's going back to my point earlier in the podcast of more and more people are getting into the political process now because they're fed up with what's going on in the government and seeing all the shit that's going down. So those are the things that are nice to see. But now I want to see the Democrats actually do something. Do I think they'll do anything? Probably not, because they've had power like this before and they've done jack dick with it. I mean, under the Obama years, they gave massive bailouts to institutions that started the great financial crisis in '08. They still continue to drone and bomb and all this stuff and their foreign policy stuff, and they haven't changed much in that. So, but hopefully more stuff will come. So get on them and tell Nancy Pelosi to stop being an asshole. I like to say worse things, but
I want to get to a point really fast because, like, what Bam opened this up with is that, like, yeah, I don't have any faith in Ossoff or Warnock to be particularly better politicians than anyone else. And I, like, largely agree with that point. I have no faith in any politician, even the ones I like. But the only thing I see, like, I really only see the Democratic elected officials as empty vessels for power. And I see some of these, I see all politicians as empty vessels for power. And that if there are politicians who are easier for me to pressure, I see that as an advantage. And right now, there are more politicians who are easier for me to pressure in power than there have been, or easier for people like me to pressure than there have been in 10 years. So that's what I'm about. I don't think they're going to agree with me. I'm probably going to fight with them, and, like, chances are I don't get the exact thing I want, but me not fighting and the left not fighting more broadly and being loud and being adversarial over the next 2 years is not going to get any of our policy agendas or our top priorities even looked at, let alone passed, because we face enough hurdles in front of us, even if we can get past the Democratic Party and what we want to, because there's the Republican Party, there's all the legal challenges that are going to come from all these different things, because the judicial branch is still flooded with conservative backing. But dealing with the Democrats is just step one, and I'm glad that we have a better fight. This is just that one time where, like, yeah, I wasn't happy during the end of the election because I was waiting until the inauguration and I wanted Georgia to happen. Now I'm a little bit better because we have a more actual, like, possible fight, so we can do things like force the vote, or at least strategies similar to force the vote, and isn't just a complete fucking waste of time.
I mean, it's always easier to fight, as a leftist, it's always easier to fight neoliberal corporatists than it is to fight fascists. So
yes, very much so. It's very easier
it's
as a person of color to fight neoliberal corporatists than it is fascists, because I mean, I don't even need to get into it because I'm taking a lot of space anyways. Other people have thoughts, right?
Bam wants to speak.
Oh, Bam, you're muted, Rooney.
And Bam is muted.
Sorry. Caesar, you want to go or you want me to go?
Go ahead. I'll go after you.
I just want to say two things. Like, I think, like, politicians are, like, these politicians are only going to be as powerful as the movements that we create to push them. And, like, the culture behind the policies, like, if we get enough people to really advocate for these policies, then, like, these politicians can end up implementing them. And I also think that this might be a good opportunity for leftists to push the Republican Party, because I don't know why we have to just push the Democrats.
Oh, well, I mean that's a damn easy ass question, because the Republicans are not receptive to the Democratic Party. The Republicans have not. I mean, the difference between leftists more broadly and, let's say, a different demographic, like, say, the Latino population, speaking, and the only time I really ever want to, speaking of the population as a singular voting bloc, is the fact that Republicans can, like, as far as the Latino voting bloc goes, Republicans and Democrats have fair game over that, because you have conservative Republicans, you have conservative Latinos, right? There's no really real thing as a conservative leftist. So, like, that's just not even in the ballpark for them. If Republicans wanted to run to the left, like Donald Trump was sort of doing that to some extent. Like, the great test for that was Donald Trump saying, yeah, let the people eat $2,000 checks. And Mitch McConnell going, dude, that's not the game. That's not what we're here to do. We're Republican LLC, and we are not about giving people money. Like, that is... We had that test play out really quickly in real time. And I want to remind you, Bam, that the Republican Party is abjectly against those things, because they've built an entire system around fear-mongering around the left. They already know they're not going to get those votes. They're going to siphon and wring out the towel of white supremacy for as long as they can.
Well, I think that there's still a fight there, because I don't necessarily look at a Democrat, at somebody who's like a centrist Democrat, as having the same politics as me either, but I'm still going to fight them too. I think, like, the Democratic Party was in the minority in the Senate these past 4 years, and the left focused on them when they didn't have the majority power. I think that because some of the, like, leftist, one leftist kind of policy is universal health care, Medicare for all, for whatever. I often hear that 70% of America wants this policy.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm like, okay, but if that's the case, then there should be at least one Republican that sees that is a good thing to run on. Somebody, I don't know if they don't know, somebody's got to be telling them, hey, 70% of America, allegedly, I don't know if that's true, I hear it all the time. If 70% of America, somebody's got to be pushing these Republicans, not necessarily left, but to policies that make sense for America.
Right, and
It would be great. It'd be great to do that, but the only issue is that so many of them are corrupt, up to their gills. That's never going to happen, because
so are Democrats.
I mean, yeah, some are.
It goes back to that, like,
that's why I say that.
Sorry, it goes back to that main point that one side is easier to pressure than the other side, and so that's the side they're going to spend energy on.
A fight ain't easy. A fight is not easy. It's a fight.
No, obviously.
But if you pressure and unite one side, then the other side has to buckle at a time when that side is the minority party, because that side is going to say,
I mean, a fight is a fight. What's easier, to invade England or Russia in the winter? Like, what the hell?
But we have enough people that we can do both.